So now I'm smiling because I'm looking at my friend Yoni Barris, who has changed the way I look at film. And I'm so anxious to hear from you today about animation. I must confess, I'm one of those, even as a kid, I never liked cartoons. Yet, we're finding animation is more and more popular today. And I must confess, my grandchildren, that's what they like to look at, even as teenagers. So Yoni's topic today is, how can animations be used to safely teaching the Holocaust through film animation? And so Yoni, we've had a sensational 3 days. We've had a total of 75 educators in and out of our workshops. I think today, we have 31 participants, which is amazing. Today, they've given up, the sunshine, the beach, and not being paid to come and join us. And what we will do is we will leave the last 15 minutes for questions, because we find that that's just as important as your presentation. And as interactive as you want to make it, that's great, because we're getting closer to lunchtime and we don't want anybody falling asleep. And you're on. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Gail. That's an extreme pleasure for me to be here, remotely here with you, and to participate in one of your amazing programs. I really feel privileged to be to have the possibility to be in touch with you and to discuss this topic. And also, I have to say that I'm so happy also to be part of a program, because I couldn't have a better introduction to what Laurie just said previously, because I'm going to talk a lot about method, but she brought so much of content, and it always goes together. And also, your introduction, Gail, is perfect, because that's exactly the specificity of this tool, of this media. There is a difference between feature movies and animation and documentaries. There are so many subgenres, and we have to be prepared. It doesn't mean that we have to be like experts, but we need to know what we are choosing as educators in order to make the best out of it, and not to repeat maybe the mistakes of the past. And it's not a question of judgment. I don't know if you mentioned that in those past days, but I just would like to remind that we were not given a handbook how to teach about genocides, right? We are human beings, and we are trying to figure it out on the way, and we want to go further and to do the best for our children. So it's going to be a lot of visuals, obviously, because we are talking about animation. So I'm just going to share my presentation, and I'm going to share already also with, so I'm going to do that again, with the sound. Sorry for that. Here we go. Yeah, I hope that you can see now the presentation.
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. Thank you.
Excellent. So just would like to start with a very first fact that when we are talking about animation movies, it's a whole genre in itself, with subgenres and different types, different approaches, different techniques that are used in order to talk about sometimes the same subject. So we are entering here into a realm that again, here we are going to talk about the tool that it is also the content. We have the tendency sometimes to make the distinction between the tool and the content, and sometimes, it's a tool is just a tool. It just a matter, a hammer. A hammer can be used for good things or bad things, but it's just a hammer. But here, when we are talking about these very specific media, sometimes, not every time, but sometimes, the tool itself can be also the content. Okay, so we have to be very careful what we are choosing. And I'm not going to be able to cover the whole thing because like Gail just mentioned, it's becoming more and more popular. We can see that it's flourishing almost every month. I hear about new animation movies. Some of them are very short. Some of them are like feature film, like a 1 hour and a half length. And we have to, again, we have to think about a couple of things before we start our duty of educating the children. Like any other tool, we have to ask ourselves first, what is our goal? What I would like to achieve, okay? Because the animation movies, like any other movie, is very powerful, okay? And we have to be aware of the fact that not to be driven by the tool is not because it is going to affect me a lot in a good way, right? That is going to do the same, you're going to have the same impact for the children. And the impact in itself is not a goal, right? Remember, it's not, our role is not to make the children cry, is not to make the children, the story is already moving enough, dramatic enough to accentuate that, right? And to try to do it even further, right? So, and the genre and the subgenre is very important. In that regard. So I know that it sounds like trivial, but I wanted to put it there because it's going to accompany us throughout this session. And I'm going to mention sometime how we can be deceived by something that we see and we think, and we need to analyze that. So yes, animation movies are part of this big family, if you can say, category of media, which are movies. And movies are talking to our intellect, but also to our emotions. So like any other movie, like Schindler's List or The Pianist or Show Off, Landsman, or etc., sometimes we can be very, very much attached to it, right? And I'm sure that if I'm going to do a survey now, I'm sure that I can, and I will ask, can you mention one movie or one book that changed your life, right? I will have many, many answers, right? And that's the same thing. We need to remember that. And here, there is another thing that we need to take into consideration is that, yes, Gail, you mentioned that in the beginning, when we talk about animation movies, we make the direct association to childhood, right? Some animations are dedicated to, some anime are dedicated to the public of adults, and sometimes we know how to recognize it, and we know how to, you already see that, oh, that's not for my children, that's not even for, we have horror movies in animation and etc. And we know that it's not even for teenagers. But sometimes, and here this is why I was speaking about the tool is also the content. Sometimes when you see something which is soft, which is, excuse me the expression, but it is cute, it is approachable, we have the tendency to think that, oh, that's for children. Okay. But we need to understand that not every movie about children is suitable for children. And not every animation movie is suitable for children. And we need the tools and it's not because something is animated that it's going to, sugarcoat the story and will make it suitable for the kids. What we need to have in mind, it is what Laurie, I could see how she was like struggling with time because she wanted to explain to you this whole approach that we have regarding not even teaching the Holocaust, but introducing the subject. Even sometimes we talk about talking about the Holocaust to young children. And we need those two in order to know what we are doing. And in the beginning, we are going to talk about to initiate the students to some of concepts. We are not going to teach about processes, historical processes, and etc., and big philosophical, subject. There is no way we can introduce the Eichmann trial, to a primary school kid, right? We are not there. We're not even the differences between the SI and the SS. We're not there, but we can initiate the discussion, right? Especially if we feel the need to. And here in Israel, we were obliged to answer to questions of primary school teachers, because they were coming with stories. My kids are talking about the Holocaust in my school, so I need answers. I need tools in order to do that in the best way possible. And in middle school, yes, we can expand the historical knowledge and we can expand the complexity of the subject. And when we arrive in high school, yes, that's the moment that we can talk about very difficult topics. So and the whole complexity, and in a spiral approach, we call it a spiral approach, because if we want to, when we are talking to a young kid, right, to focus on the individual, later on in middle school, we are going also to wider the circle of the story with the family and the community. And when we get to high school, we have the wider historical context and complex moral questions. We call it spiral approach because even if we get to high school, exactly like Laurie has said and done that and showed to you, she wanted to connect also with the individual, the family, and the community. So we are not leaving behind, the individual, even if we get to high school, right? And we are going to focus on questions that we feel and we know, not only feel, that there is a real educational added value, like the Jewish life before, the Jewish resistance, the saving Jews, the righteous among the nations, return to life, and etc. So I wanted to give you here in a nutshell this approach of the age-appropriate approach, because we must talk about that when it comes to animation. Now, this is why Yad Vashem has created, for the Israeli public, 3 animated movies. As you can see here, the length of all of them, all of them are less than 15 minutes. And some of them, at least the first 2, were already introduced to the large Israeli public on Yom HaShoah, the commemoration, national commemoration of the Holocaust. And they were introduced also to many, many schools. And they are going according to those principles that I just introduced to you. And here, the tool and the characteristics of the tool, and how do you say that, the qualities of the tool are going to meet also the pedagogy. Right. So we have the story of Simcha Holzberg, for example, which is already for grade 3 and 4, grade 4 and 5 for Aaron Barak and Genia Reznik. For example, the way that we start is going to be, the method will be the same. But sometimes also the approach will be the same, and the story sometimes will be slightly different. Depends on the age that we are targeting. Right, or the development. We are not even sometimes talking about grades. We are talking about the level of development, cognitive and emotional development of the kid. So, for example, both of those stories are going to start, which are true stories, obviously, are going to start with the life before, which is going to make this distinction between the then and now. And here, again, the tool is the content, because the now is going to be with actors, right? And they are going to introduce us to the story, but the story of the Holocaust is going to be animated. Right? Now, if I make a jump now to the topic of films, right, Gail, we mentioned that in the beginning, we can see that in feature films, in cinema, in Hollywood, in European cinema, and etc., we can see that films always struggle with with the challenge of reproducing the past. We try through films to reconstruct the past, the history. And here with the animation, we can diffuse this problem because we can never reconstruct the past, right? We can only represent the past. And with the animation, we have this capacity of diffusing this, let's say, this not humble, goal to reconstruct the past, because from the very beginning we see that that's not the Warsaw Ghetto as it was. It is an animation, but it is a message. It is a subtle message that, on the one hand, we will never be able to go there, right? But we have the capacity to listen to the people who were there. And here, how you see how the animation can be also, the tool can also be the content in itself. And the second thing, but talking about the Jewish life before here in the introduction, you have this possibility to, like Laurie said also, to lesser down, the anxiety and not focusing on unnecessary emotional burden. Right? So we are talking already about the fact that the person survived, and we are going back in time in order to introduce also to people who were before they were victimized. Okay, so that's one method that was used by Yad Vashem in order to do that. And here I would like you to watch a couple of minutes, only 3 minutes, of Simcha Holzberg, right? This very short animated movie, in order to see how we, through this film, we try to introduce the young children to key points of the Holocaust, to the question of resilience and anchors of life, and to the question of values. Okay, so the little Simcha was incarcerated together with his parents in the Warsaw Ghetto. Let's listen to him, and we'll discuss that in a couple of minutes.
Why did they build a wall?
Because the Germans didn't want the Jews to leave the ghetto.
What's a ghetto?
A ghetto is an area inside a city which the Germans sealed and forced the Jews to move into. Only the Jews with work permits got special permission to leave the ghetto. The German soldiers guarded the entrances from the outside of the ghetto. Inside the ghetto, it was very crowded. In the winter, there was not enough food, so hunger became a very big problem. Simcha had no choice. He exchanged what little his family had for some food. He gave his neighbor his coat for half a loaf of bread, and he exchanged medicine for some potatoes. Soon, even that was gone, and there was no food left at all in the ghetto. One night, Simcha woke up and heard whispering sounds.
We have no food left, Shmuel. What should we do?
I'll sneak through the wall and get us something to eat.
What are you talking about? That's so dangerous. You could get caught.
There's no choice. If we don't eat, we'll die.
Simcha heard their conversation and decided he had to do something. The night became day, and Simcha still had not returned.
Where was Simcha?
He escaped the ghetto. There were some children who were able to smuggle dry bread and potatoes into the ghetto. Simcha couldn't find any food. He didn't want to come back home empty-handed, so he searched and searched all night. You won't believe what he came back with.
Come on, Grandpa, tell me already.
Chocolate.
Chocolate?
Chocolate. And even though he only found one bar, his mother found a way to divide the bar up for everyone. She melted the chocolate in hot water. The sweet steam of the chocolate spread through the whole house and slowly reached the other children. Noam, you won't believe what happened in those few moments. It was an unforgettable moment.
Okay. So you can see here that what was the choice of the themes, and you can imagine how many horrific things we could have chosen from the story of Simcha, right? For the very fact that also his parents not passed away, they were murdered, and for all the things that he have seen during this time inside the ghetto and outside of the ghetto, right? But here the choice was a selection of anchors of life in order to introduce the students to something that it is bearable. Okay? It's bearable for them, and just to put them into a situation that they can accept some key points, some notions. What is a ghetto? Yes, Nazis existed, okay, and there is a Jewish people, and the Jewish people who is going to go through some very, very difficult times, but in the same time, there were also a word of values, right? In a time where values were crumbling. Now, the thing that we are going to focus on is very much also on the emotional world of our students, right? So we can accompany, and here you have the way that we do that with the second movie, animated movie of Aaron Barak. So we can take slides of this animation movie, and we can analyze that together with the students. I felt by watching this movie, I felt and letting also the students to express themselves. I would like to ask. I think that Aaron is or was supposed to or anything, right? And our role is to accompany the children into that story and to drive them, not into the technical aspects of the Holocaust. That they will be able to do that in high school, but to more again. I'm mentioning that again to the anchors of life, and I would like maybe to tell Aaron this and that. Okay, so this is how we approach that through animation movies, and you might maybe would like to ask, okay, but are we not sugarcoating the whole story? Is that the purpose of an animation? Now we are going to make a very nice story when okay, but I've seen that also with my in a poor neighborhood in my city that okay, some kids took some food and chocolate and just divided that into. Is that the same story? And is it? And if not, is it possible to talk about the final, so to teach about the final solution or talk about it in primary school? So we do that. Okay, we do that, but the emphasis is not going to be on the technical approach of it. And here in this movie, we have Noam, so this young kid, is asking his grandfather, so what happened to Simcha after that? And the grandfather says, Simcha and his family has had to cope with many hardship and a lot of suffering during the war. However, Simcha survived. And Noam is asking back, and what happened to his mother and father? They didn't survive. They were murdered during the Holocaust. So the final solution is there, but is not going to be the focus. We are not going to sugarcoat, we are not going to bypass the core of the story. It's just a question of emphasis, of what we are going to spend our very limited time that we have with the students. The same thing with Aaron Barak film. And here we are talking about the Kovno ghetto. And here also it's going to be mentioned that the Germans want to liquidate the ghetto. What does it mean? Again, we can say it, but we are going to put much more emphasis on how Aaron is going to be saved by his mother and a righteous among the nation, and later on how he's going to meet again with the family of the righteous among the nation many years afterwards, when he's going to become a high court judge here in the state of Israel. And we are going to focus on those aspects. But it doesn't mean now, and we're going to make a jump ahead, that animation movie is only for primary school kids. Here, the tool can also be the part of the content in order to talk about this very difficult subject of the final solution, also for high school students. And here I would like to introduce you, if maybe you know that already, the Azrieli series short films. It is on their website, and they have a series of memoirs, a collection of memoirs, collection of testimonies. And what they've done is that they made a short films of those memoirs, and they added also some animation into this film in order to accompany and to bring the context, okay? And bringing also the voice of person, first person concern, the survivor, but a voice with someone who was at their age at that time. And here, let's listen. Let's see, for example, the animation movie of Felicia Carmelli, and we'll discuss that together.
After 3 grueling days, we reached a little town on the shore of the river Dniester called Ataki. We were told that we would remain there for a few days. Once a thriving Jewish town, Ataki was bombed out and in total ruins. Not a single resident who had lived there before the war could be found. The soldiers let us out of the train and ordered us to go out and seek shelter, wherever we could find it. In one of the houses, we found 2 rooms where the ceilings were relatively intact to shelter us from the freezing rain and snow. The next day, my mother decided to take me to the river to clean up after our hellish 3 days journey. In her mind, it was a bigger risk to go on so filthy than to be caught by the soldiers guarding us. I was looking forward to feeling clean once again. We went to the river very early in the morning, hoping the soldiers would still be asleep. It was barely light outside. When we got to the water, we were horrified by the gruesome sight that we encountered. Dead bodies and limbs of people and horses and torn up bloody Jewish prayer books and Torah scrolls were scattered all over. Mother somehow mustered up the strength to wash herself and me despite this. On our way back to where the rest of the family was, the soldiers spotted us and started shooting. We both fell to the ground and began crawling, my mother on top of me so the bullets wouldn't hit me. We managed to stumble into a dark cave to hide. After our eyes adapted to the darkness, we saw some writing on the walls in Hebrew. Painted in blood on the stone walls, the writing said, "Please say Kaddish for the many people who were murdered here."
I feel offended and hurt when people talk about all the other camps, and Transnistria is rarely, if ever, mentioned. Because for me, and I suppose for other survivors, it is like killing us all over again. The Holocaust is always in our background, and we will take it to our grave. And what will happen to our memories after we're gone, only God knows.
So here you have an example of how animation movie can help us also to accompany the voice of the survivors and how to fill in the gaps sometimes when it is almost impossible to recreate that through films, or it might be too expensive in order to do that, but still being accessible to a young public, and in the same time to have to create this empathy, right, to this connection by listening to the voice of someone who has the same age of the students, right, but also meeting this person through this film, and making the connection again between the then and the now, right? So here that is a very sophisticated way in order to mediate, right, a very difficult subject. And you could see here how the final solution also is introduced to students who are supposed to be more mature now than in primary school students, in order to sustain and to bear also more difficult, and abstract aspects of a genocide. Right? And we can have that through the colors, through the animation. Now, we can do the same thing also by introducing the same topics that Laurie just mentioned previously, talking about resilience, spiritual, and armed resistance through the animation movie. And here we have this series that was created by Yad Vashem in our Video Toolbox collection, which was to introduce to high school students the story of Emanuel Regenblum in Oynek Shabbos. We have 6 videos like this, in which the animation is going to take a great part. Why? Because we have thousands of pages, right? We have thousands of pages of written documents. We have also photos that were taken, and we have some artworks also that were created by those people. But many aspects also of the story are missing. So how to, again, mediate this huge knowledge to the students in order to be bearable, to be understandable, and even sometimes those very abstract notions. So when we have, and here are our challenges, when we have a lack of visual materials, right? For example, if we are going to focus in a minute on the story of Peretz Opochinsky, okay, who was part of this group of people who were taking the chronicles of the Warsaw Ghetto. When we have no visual documentation, right, of the houses, of the ghetto streets, and when the few that we have, it was taken by the Germans themselves, right? For us, it's a real question of ethics, to show the victims, not only from the point of view of the perpetrators themselves, but also from the Jewish point of view. But if we want to do something visual, how you're going to do that, and how you do it when you know that in order to attract the attention of a young person today, you need to do that in less than 10 minutes, even to less than 7 minutes, right? So in order to do that, animation was chosen in order to fill in the gap. And here, the topic will be resilience and resistance. And we've chosen the story of Peretz Opochinsky, who was a journalist, he was a writer, he was an educator, and he was going to be a member of the underground, of the Oynek Shabbos underground, but he's also going to have a very specific job. He was also a mailman inside the ghetto. Okay, let's watch 2 minutes of this animation movie, which is a little bit longer. But let's talk about the core of the story, and how we try, again, to be mediators of abstract notions to the young public.
The Jewish woman is dizzy as she waits. In her mind, the letter soon becomes a huge round of cheese, a fat salami, or a thick chunk of butter. Before long, her eyes can see nothing else, her ears nothing else. When a Warsaw Jew received a package with items such as these, he would be able to take some of it, a portion of tea, coffee, whiskey, or tobacco, for instance, and sell it for good money on the open market. Selling part of the delicacies could bring in enough to pay for food for several weeks, and he could go on and consume the rest. There were times when a card announcing a package to come would determine the fate of an entire family, deciding whether they would live or die. The higher the cost of living climbed and the tighter the noose was drawn around the neck of the ghetto Jews, the stronger their clamor for mail became. The constant wait for packages drove people out of their minds. The street numbers of the buildings were terribly confusing. Doing his job conscientiously became a next to impossible task for the Jewish letter carrier, especially in winter. when walking up slippery, often broken stairs could become a deadly affair. The knock on the door in the middle of the night, what a torture it was. Jews trembled at the prospect of house searches and assaults. When no one answered immediately, the knock became stronger. The mail, after all, must not be delayed. In winter, the letter carrier might see 10 to 12 people in the home of one of the larger families, lying in bed with pale faces and feverish eyes, swallowing their spittle. Things were scattered around the house in a terrifying disorder, a reminder of the truth of the old saying, like outside, like inside. What was obvious was that all were crazed by a single obsessive idea. Where can I get a little piece of bread? And then, suddenly, boom, war with Russia. At the post office, all hell breaks loose. The letters that trickle in become fewer by the day. Thousands of letters sent to Russia over the last few days are being returned with the German notation, postal service suspended. As the nightmare of Jewish Warsaw darkens, hope is gradually extinguished. No more letters from Russia. No more packages. Just walls. Drab, red, and cold ghetto walls, like the walls of so many cheerless prisons. Who cares about the Jewish post office or the swollen feet of the Jewish letter carrier now?
So we have here something which is much more abstract, right? This is something which is more difficult to understand, and even here the challenge is even more difficult. We have only one picture of Peres Opochinski, how to tell his story, and still having an added educational value here in that story to the students. So we are using here some of the symbols that exist in his writing, and here the idea was to use only his voice, where no additional text brought by Yad Vashem. It is taken from the Oyneg Shabbos, the part that was brought by Peres Opochinski. And we bring the windows that are, supposed to, because Peres Opochinski is actually, he is the mediator between two worlds, right? He has one leg in the inside world because he brings the packages, and the packages is a symbol of the external world. This is a symbol of life because it is also the symbol of food. In those packages, there were some objects, but in many cases it was food, and food is life. And on the other hand, he has also a leg into the very intimate and private world of the families, broken families now. Like families that they don't resemble anything that the family how they look like beforehand. There is no one family which is intact, and some of them are totally disseminated, right? So here we have like Peres Opochinski is going to be the symbol of something which is bigger, is going to represent something which is going to be this world that we cannot know if we don't listen to the voices of the Jews during the time, and we are going to miss a lot if we are going to refer only to the pictures that were taken by the Nazis themselves. So here, and this is when at the very center, if there is a lack of packages, if there is a lack of food, death is around the corner. So it's definitely not sugarcoating, but it's trying to, again, the animation movie here is trying to is going to be the tool and the content in itself in order to be able to present to the world the writings of Peres Opochinski. to move on. And here we have armed resistance. We mentioned that. So I could also mention our animated movie that was created by Yad Vashem more recently, but I also wanted to pay tribute to other institutions that are also doing a great job. And here we have the same topic of the Warsaw Ghetto uprising. You had just one glance at what Laurie shown to you previously, and here we have the animated movie created by the Polin Museum of the History of the Polish Jews. And it's very interesting in a similar way that the Azrieli Foundation has done it. Here also you will have animation movie that is going to represent the actual development of this event, but also it's going to be accompanied by the voices of Holocaust survivors. So again, you have, it's not just an independent story. You have the people who actually have been there, that they can testify about how it was there. And the animated movie is also going to present their dilemmas, how they had to face it, right? And the difficulties, and to representing that, again, not with actors, not with Hollywood actors, like beautiful actors that are going to sometimes distort a little bit our perception of the past. Now, if we move on, if we are talking about the added value of the animation movies for high school students in order to teach the Holocaust, sometimes also they can be very, very useful in order to introduce to our public the abstract concepts or complex topics, right? So here I invite you to go to our website and you can click on the education and e-learning section. This is our section here at Yad Vashem, the International School for Holocaust Studies. You can go there to Holocaust educational videos, and here you have key historical concepts. So you have a list of some of these concepts, like the Wannsee Conference, totalitarian regimes, Nazi camps. What is a shtetl? Okay. What was the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising? What was the Operation Reinhardt, and Kristallnacht, and etc. And in a very short video, you have the possibility to explain something that sometimes it takes us half an hour. Okay, so it's not, obviously, it's not going to be the whole lesson. You will need to be there in order to accompany that, but at least you will have the possibility to diversify your lesson and to be helped by also institutions that have done the work for you. For example, in here, you will have the context. You will be able afterwards to talk, you will be able to talk about individual stories or stories of families when the historical context will be already be given by this video. Let's listen and watch this video that talks about the camps.
The first concentration camps were constructed in Germany in 1933. They were primarily used to solidify the regime by using political terror and incarcerating those perceived as dissidents. The working model for these camps was Dachau. After the consolidation of the regime, those perceived as a threat to the Nazi vision, such as asocials, were also sent to the camps. At this stage, especially following the Kristallnacht in 1938, the number of Jewish prisoners in the camps rose significantly, the majority of whom were exploited for economic purposes, many as forced labor. Due to the significant rise in prisoner count and the need to exploit the conquered territories, including their manpower, the Germans began constructing many more labor camps, some solely for Jews. During this period, prisoners of war camps and other concentration camps were constructed as well. The number of concentration camps constructed in Germany and throughout Europe continued to increase. From this point on, the concentration and labor camps were used for massive and brutal exploitation of prisoner labor and for implementing the policy of mass murder of Jews. For this purpose, 6 extermination camps were constructed and converted from existing camps. Some of them were concentration and extermination camps, such as Auschwitz-Birkenau and Majdanek, and some were exclusively extermination camps, such as Chelmno and Treblinka. In total, tens of thousands of different kinds of camps were constructed, in which millions of people were murdered or died.
So here you can see the very specific nature, right, of this short video. It's very short and it's very factual. It is an historical course, right? A whole historical course that you can have at a university, a couple of hours, good couple of hours, in order to understand what was the what were the camps. But here it is squeezed in a very short manner, and the animation is helping us in order to reach this historical precision. Now, I would like now to introduce you to another video that is going to talk to us about the same topic, the camps, but from a total different point of view, from a total different approach, and still it is animation. And here the art will have a total different purpose. I would like to introduce you to the Holon Institute of Technology project. They worked with us. It was a couple of years of project with them when their students come to Yad Vashem. Holon is in the suburbs of Tel Aviv. Right? So their students, they come to Yad Vashem, they have a program with us, and then they create an artwork. And here in this case, it will be sometimes it's video art, sometimes it can be different aspects, and here it will be animation. Okay. One of the students chosen to focus on this authentic document, this portrait, and this is how she's going to call also this the video portrait, and it is about Shoshana Levinger, or first name Shoshana Rochlitz, who went through the camps, and this is how she told her story. Okay, and okay, so let's watch it. It's going to be a 2-minute video only, and we'll discuss the differences between this one and the previous animated movie. So the same topic, the camps. On the one hand, we have something very historical, very factual. We have numbers, we have dates, we have how it looked like. And here we have the camps, but around the subject of items, objects, authentic objects like the portrait, and also abstract notions like dehumanization. And that's something that we think that they must come together. And that's what we mean when we mean the spiral approach. And here the animation is, on the one hand, yes, only a tool that can convey both of those objectives that we have, but there are also some, in both of the cases, there are also the content, right? Here I would like, we're giving you the tools in order to know how to choose those animated movies in a careful way, but not to be afraid also to add that into your teaching, because sometimes it is very difficult. And yes, art, it is very powerful, and sometimes art is the only way to convey some of our messages. And we need to do that. We need to remember that we have our historical context that we need to bring into the classroom, but there is also this layer that we need to also to bring into it and to talk about the genocide from the human point of view. And this is something, now, having this without the context, it will be, out of the place. It will be a little bit difficult to understand, and to understand the gravity of this story. Right, and we can definitely miss a point. So it has to be introduced in a good way. And so it doesn't mean that we need to combine those two together in every time, but I think they can, in my opinion, they come together in a great way, in a great manner, because they complement each other. So we have a whole series of those short animated movies talking about very individual stories from different countries in Europe during the Holocaust. So it is in our website. Although many of them are in Hebrew, I think that part of our work here together with Laurie and the rest of Cheryl and the rest of our team would be to make it more and more accessible also to the to other people outside of Israel, especially to the English-speaking public. And because, again, we think that they are very, very valuable. Now, we discussed about the life before. We discussed about how we talk about the Holocaust together with animation from the story during the Holocaust, but also we have the capacity of the animated movies to help us to talk about also some part of the stories that we have the tendency to forget, and to because sometimes we don't even have the time to talk about it. And we are talking here about the post-Holocaust, the aspect of the post-war. Right, it is also part of the story of the Holocaust, but the trauma that comes together with the genocide. And here I would like to introduce you to two different animated movies. I Was a Child of a Holocaust Survivor, who was based on a book by Bernice Eisenstein, from Canada, and another one which is Second Generation: My Revenge on Hitler, which is also based on a comic created by Michel Kishka from Belgium. Now he's living in Israel, and the second one just came out this year. So just for you to know how, again, it took time in order to those subjects to be treated. And here we have the stories of the second generation. Right?
Yoni, just to tell you, you have 10 more minutes, because Irvin,
okay.
Do we have questions?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, so we have folks that have questions. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm just going to finish with that. So I'm not going to show the animated movie regarding that, but just to mention that also we can see more and more animated movies also addressing this topic of the post-Holocaust trauma Okay? And definitely this thing has to be mediated, right? It has to be accompanied by and it's definitely dedicated to high school students, because they are very much abstract. They are talking about psychology, and they are talking about things that are not tangible, basically. But this is especially because of that animated movies also can be useful in order to talk about it, right? So the last thing I would like to mention is this suggestion. Again, the tools that you choose must serve the pedagogical goal. And it doesn't mean because you're here, you have a very beautiful animated movie that it means that it's good for children and very young children in primary school. You need to figure out, again, what you want to achieve. You want to teach about what was the Holocaust, you want to teach about the aspects of the post-war, or you want to teach, again, you want to teach young kids, you want to teach high school kids, etc. And then to figure out if my tool is the appropriate one. So thank you very much. Just finished, just reached the end of the presentation. And
I do want to say that if you want to go back to the second generation, we have time for at least one of them.
Okay, yes.
Just to, because a lot of us don't know that term, second generation. So just to say that these are children of Holocaust survivors, and maybe some of us have one or two children in our class who are grandchildren or great-grandchildren, as we're getting older now, great-grandchildren of Holocaust survivors. So
that's only 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. So we'd love to see one clip. We have time for that.
Yeah, so that will be the last one. Here we go.
It is 1961 and I am 11 years old. Adolf Eichmann is on trial in Israel. And in our rec room, 100 dead is a catastrophe. 1 million dead, a statistic. I had always known that my parents were survivors of the Holocaust, but until today, its relationship to me had remained invisible. Suddenly, I am injected with the white heat rush of a new reality. The Holocaust is a drug, and I have entered an opium den, being given my first taste for free, innocently, by everyone here. I have only just glimpsed its power, scanning the trail of needle marks on the left forearm of each person in the room. This is where my addiction takes hold. I will discover there is no end to the dealers I can find for just one more hit, one more hallucinatory entry into the world of ghosts. Will we never get any rest? My parents don't even know they are drug dealers. What is she talking about? How could they possibly imagine the kind of high age gives? The way it makes me want to dive into its endless depths. Sending me out of my home, alone, to the cinema, to the library, where I can see every movie and read every book that deals the Holocaust. But don't get me wrong. There were minutes, days, months when my addiction subsided, and I had no need to see the man for another dose. But the craving is there. I'm forever tied to it. And I even learned to trade on it. Ow! Don't do that. My parents were in Auschwitz. My parents were in Auschwitz. My parents were in Auschwitz.
Okay, so it is difficult. It's not an easy subject. It is sensitive. You need to have a class with a good level of understanding. What is the historical context? Where is it coming from? Why she's speaking like that? But here also you can see that how the animation movie is a tool that can help to reach this gap. And the spirit, again, of this animation movie is also giving us a hint of the difficulty that people had maybe to recover from this story, and for their children also to bear the burden of this very difficult story. We know that it was also introduced to the world through the comics of Art Spiegelman with Maus and with others too, and through the more classical literature, right? Some poems. And here you have also animation movie that help us in order to talk about the subject. We need to, it's not that we have solutions, right? But we need, it is okay to introduce that to the students in order to understand that all genocide always have, in all the cases, all genocides, they have also these post-genocide effects that the society must deal with. And not only the question of justice or injustice, you know, the incapacity to really bring justice after such an event, but also how to accompany the very first people concerned.
Yoni,
So,
I may comment just because
yeah.
At Stockton and in our dual high school credit program, so many of our students are refugees.
Mm-hmm.
And they are bearing some of those same burdens.
Mm-hmm.
And each of us could tell you stories of what that burden meant, whispering at night in the kitchen so the kids couldn't hear, you know, problems with documentation, medical needs, etc. And I find that as, you know, today, that more and more of my students relate to these stories and feel, wow, if I'm just going to talk about the survivor who we're highlighting tonight in a play, if Rosalie Simon could overcome her burdens, perhaps I can too. So a certain percentage gets solace from it. I can't tell you how many, I'm not saying 100%, but I'm so glad that you brought that up. And the other thing I want to say is, excuse me, last summer, you shared with us a life story of Rena Quint.
Mm-hmm.
And many, I don't want to say many, but some of our teachers that were part of the seminar last summer started calling and saying, I just saw President Biden is at Yad Vashem. Would you please share with us what happened? Were you there?
No.
But do you know what happened? Yes.
Well, from what I've heard,
Yeah.
maybe there are also other side stories that I'm not aware of, but I think that he was supposed to meet him just a couple of minutes. And I don't know if you know, but the Biden's visit here to Israel was a real challenge for the whole city of Jerusalem and even some other parts of the country logistically, and how every minute was organized and counted in his program. And he was supposed only to meet 2 Holocaust survivors for a very, very short amount of time. But he stayed there for I don't remember how long, but she was able to captivate his attention because she's someone I don't know, it's almost impossible to compare her to anyone. She was not alone, by the way. She was also together with Gita Tsikovic, she's also a tremendous woman, and both of them stay there and they continue to talk more and more and more, and we could see that, in my opinion, it was so genuine. We could see that he was not even supposed to touch anyone, and they hugged and they kissed because I think that he realized that what the whole place meant, this whole institution of Yad Vashem. And the fact that so many people are coming here, and the fact that we also wanted him to come here, it could again summarize everything through their 2 personal stories. And Rena, that's Rena.
Nancy, I don't know you. I assume you're in Jerusalem. Can you join us?
I was there for the Echoes and Reflections program with Cheryl, and we
Right.
met Rena the day after she met the president. And they're right, traffic was ridiculous the whole time he was there. But what she said to him was that she loved that he held his wife, Dr. Jill's hand, because that's what she and her husband used to do. And that's what caught his attention.
Wow. Thank you for sharing. And so these links that happen all the time, it's amazing. So I thank you so much. And Irvin, I'm going to turn it back to you for the questions. And Yoni, don't think you're not going to get a big thank you at the end. But let's get right to the questions.
Thank you. Yoni, so we have some questions about some of the videos. The first question is, what is the relationship of Simcha Holtzberg to the man who told the story to, I assume, his grandson?
So no, the two people that we can see in the beginning, the grandfather and the grandson, are actors, and it's a way to have a entry point into the story, because that's the thing. Simcha passed away many years ago, so we don't have this possibility to record again and to interview him or to film him for this production. So the part that was let's say fictionized, right, was these two people who are going to introduce us to the story of Simcha Holtzberg. And here, that's a little bit like in a documentary, you have a commentator, right? Someone who will introduce us also to the story of the past of the history. Now, for the Israeli public, actually, the grandfather, this person is very well known. He's a very well known actor. Not at all like for the rest of the world, but yes, but there is no connection, no family connection between.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is, was mail delivery by Jewish mail carriers unique to the Warsaw Ghetto? Did it happen in other ghettos?
That's a good question. I think that it was also part in other big ghettos that have a well-organized Judenrat, right? A council of Jews where they could have the possibility to send parcels. Many parcels were sent from the United States. The Joint Committee was this organization that had a possibility still until the war broke out with the Soviet Union. They were capable of sending parcel to their families and to take pictures. We know that the Judenrat also was taking pictures of the ghetto and of the Jews, of their conditions, in order to fundraise some of the Jewish self-help. So this is something that people don't know in many aspects. We have the tendency to think again that the ghetto phenomenon was something monolithic and like the same from the beginning until the end, but it was something with very much emotion, very dynamic. And yes, the more we advance inside the war and inside the final solution, the conditions are worsening. Yeah, sometimes from week to week. And in the very first stage, you have there's still possibilities now. Some of the ghettos are going to be created when the final solution already started. So we can even think like some of the ghettos that were created in the Soviet Union, right? There is no possibility whatsoever for mail to be sent, right? But you have this, and you have these correspondences that happened inside Poland or the general government. But here we are talking very much about parcels that were coming from even from outside of Europe. So it very much depends not only about post mail, right? It is about anything. There is no one rule about the ghettos. if there is a fence or there is no fence. How many people were incarcerated? Is that only a couple of hundreds, or we are talking about hundreds of thousands, right? How much food they had? Did they have to work or not? Everything is almost case by case. Why? Because there was no one centralized policy given by the Nazis regarding the ghettos. In very much different from the camps, which you can see there, even if it was not totally centralized, you can see there a pattern, right? Where the ghettos, it's one generic term for many different, we can say, coping situation of the Nazis regarding how they have to control these big Jewish communities, right? That they were scattered, and there were big Jewish communities there in Central Europe. So I can imagine that in most of the places there was no possibility for mail from the very first beginning, but it doesn't mean that in some of the other places there was this possibility. So I hope that it's always difficult to answer a question regarding the ghettos. I hope that I brought some more clarity about it.
Yes, thank you. The next question is, what is your view on these new video games that try and tell the story of the Holocaust as a video game from the rise of the Nazis and then the liberation of the camps?
Okay, good question. Excellent question. So here we are talking about the different media. So we are not in animation movie. We are not in movies anymore. We are in something which is on the screen, and something not even a screen, in a VR device, right? Which is not also talking to our emotions and our intellect, but putting us into a situation of identification, not empathy, and identification. So we are putting here a leg into the role play, right? So something that we just discussed a couple of minutes ago together with Gail, right? When we mentioned that also with Laurie. So we have to be extra cautious when we are addressing the topic of video games. We know on the other hand, we know that sometimes that's the first time that children are introduced to.
Okay, you're now back.
Oh,
so
okay.
You were frozen and we couldn't hear you. So for the past 2 minutes, you may have to repeat it.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So, no, sure. Thank you for mentioning that. So I was just saying that we are entering here into the video games. It's a combination of the visual media like movies, but together with the role play. It's one leg here, one leg there. So we have to be very cautious when we are using this tool. For what purpose? We have the tendency to think that that's not the best option to take in order to teach about, especially because we are talking here, there are many games that exist, and some of them, they try to reconstruct again this position of the victim or the position of the perpetrator, and we don't want to be there, right? We don't need to emotionally identify. What we want to do is to create empathy, and it's not the same. We want to be there in order to connect with the suffering of the other through the individual story, the family story, and the big historical processes. But it doesn't mean that we need to be in the very same situation, right? To be into their boots in order to understand what was the Holocaust. It's a little bit the same scenario when we take here Israeli students to Poland, and sometimes we are tempted to ask the students to, okay, so take off your shoes now. You will need to feel the snow in order to understand what was the Holocaust. We don't think that that's the right way. We don't have to feel victims in order to understand what was the Holocaust. We think that we can do that through literature, through poems, through art, through reading books, through watching animated movies, okay? But that are going to introduce us to the story, but I still can continue to be Yoni. 2022, you know, I'm a free man and still connect with the suffering of the other. So trying to play, in quotation marks, their situation for us is not what is going to bring the educational added value. And having seen that, we know that sometimes that through video games, that's how students are the first time introduced to the history of the Holocaust, or at least to the symbolism of the Holocaust. So we need to be aware of that. So we need to accompany that, right? And we need to be, we have, in Hebrew we say we have one finger on the pulse, right? In order to know that we cannot counter it, because video games are there, and that's not our role to, it's not in our power, right? To stop that. However, our role is going to do, when we are going to talk about the Holocaust, we are going to talk about it in the right way in our classroom. And we have actually, we have quality time with them. Okay, we have this amount of time. So we have this possibility also to correct the inaccuracies of the history and the way it is mistreated sometimes. Because I know that, for example, if we take one big example, Wolfenstein, right? This very, very popular game, when you have a combination of horror game together with science fiction, and added to that, you have the background of the Holocaust symbolism. So we need to be there in order to say that's total science fiction. That's not a reality. Okay. And even if we take more soft examples like Call of Duty, it doesn't mean that if we are playing it, it doesn't mean that we are introduced to the whole story. Okay, there's an entire world that we can be there, and we can bring our educational added value.
I'm going to echo what Doug Survey, our New Jersey Executive Director of Holocaust Education, our commission, said. Thank you so much, because this is something that happens. Our students talk to us about it, our teachers. So we both thank you. And Irvin, we have time for one more question. That's a big pressure. I know you have a long list of questions. Choose one, please, that maybe reflects several in one.
Yes, there is one. Yoni, are there any animated films that link to today? For example, stories from the past to make a better world today, that you could recommend for the educators?
Wow, that's a good question. It's a very large question. To connect it to today, we need to think about it twice. Maybe this is something I can send you, Gail. Maybe we'll have to think about it.
That would be perfect, and then we'll send it out to everyone, and that reflects how much you think and prepare for this. And we want to thank you. You have a fan club, as you know, including some of our folks in communication studies at Stockton who couldn't come today, but said a big shout out. And we want you to come to visit us. We just have to work that out, okay? Or put that down on all our to-do lists, those of us associated with the university. I mean this from the heart, because you open up so many new avenues for us. And this is how our students relate today. We have to stay contemporary. We have to have past to relate. So thank you so much. Let's all clap. Don't close out yet, guys, because I have one more thing. But we got to show you. Thank you so much. You've changed the way I teach. I told you that before. And then when I saw Rena Quinn, I thought, oh my goodness, then I'll share that with my summer school students. It was amazing. So you open up all these worlds. We don't even know when it's going to come up again, like President Biden visiting Yad Vashem. To all of you, please do the evaluations, because this is how we get our funding to offer all these workshops free. So please, all we need is your evaluation. It's not too late for day 1, day 2, and of course for day 3. And Have a great rest of the summer. I did lightly mention, but I'll do a shout out now tonight on our Atlantic City campus. For the cost of free, we have a play dedicated to the life story of Holocaust survivor Rosalie Simon. She, Yoni, and her 4 sisters survived Auschwitz. An amazing story. And there was a newspaper article in the Philadelphia Inquirer, which is like the New York Times of Philadelphia, about her family. And the someone from Rowan University contacted me and said, "Is this a true story?" I said, "Yes." And he said, "I'd like to do a one-woman play, write it." I thought, "Oh, sure." And I'm going to, start to work for Steven Spielberg, but whatever. I just said, "Okay, great." A year later, he called me and he said, "I wrote the play and one of my students is going to be the actor." And so we have seen the play. It is excellent. It's 1 hour long. And Rosalie will be there tonight, the survivor, to see the play about her life story. Doors open at 6:30. The play begins at 7. All of our educators will receive PDHs. We're expecting a full house. So come on down. Parking is free right next to our Atlantic City Academic Building at Albany and Atlantic Avenues. And I wish you were nearby, Yoni, so you could come and see the play. Thank you all so much. We will all be in touch. Doug, you're one of my bosses, right? You work for the governor. I work for the governor.
Yeah, we all work for you. Who you kidding?
Any closing comments, and then we'll let Steve.
Oh, no, thank you very much. These are awesome programs. Thank you all the teachers for giving up your time that you can bring into your classroom, enhance what you already do. The commission, like I said before, is anything that you need from us, feel free to contact myself or Brianna. Irving has already put our contact information into the chat. And if you do anything, feel free. But seriously, it's your tax money. I'd be more than happy to give you some of your money back. Yoni, take care of yourself, and thank you so much.
And your dog has been part of it and did not bark for the UPS delivery.
Oh, no, she barked.
Oh,
I had it
okay.
on
We
mute,
didn't
thank
hear.
goodness.
Steve, any closing comments?
Yeah, it's great to see all of you guys. Yoni, that was absolutely magnificent. And I'm sure that the dual credit teachers and all the teachers can utilize this information. Make certain to do your evaluation or they'll fire me. So
And so, Yoni, we have something a little unique. It's called dual high school credit through Stockton University. So we have how many high schools, Steve?
35, give or take.
35 high schools under our faculty supervision and full classes studying Holocaust and genocide studies, and those that complete it successfully receive credit. I couldn't have done these programs without Matthew Assad, whose family is from Egypt, and Irvin Marino Rodriguez, whose family is from Mexico. Matthew, do you want to give a shout out and a goodbye? And Irvin, you'll be our closer.
Yoni, that was a wonderful presentation. Really amazing how you can incorporate animation into a lot of these really wonderful stories. So really, really incredible. Thank you everybody for being here. And I'll just stress as well, do your evaluation. That way Professor Marcus doesn't get fired.
And yes, thank you, everyone. I echo Matthew's statements. We don't ask for much, so please complete the evaluations just because, we really do want to hear from you, and this really helps us prepare for the next, which will be the 6th annual Wally and Lutz Hammerschlag Summer Educator Seminar, which the planning will start soon, I am sure. So thank you again. Thank you, Yoni. Lori, I know, is no longer with us, but Yoni, your presentations are just absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Yoni, we'll let you be the closer.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I have to say that we've met during COVID, right? And by then it was like a necessity to contact by Zoom. But I think that, we are starving for meeting face to face. But again, it's great to see you out there, and it gives us the strength, us here, because when we are working in those in these topics, people say, how are you dealing with the Holocaust on a daily basis? And the fact that we can continue to do that is because we meet people like you, and I'm saying that seriously. So it's a great honor to be part of it. Gail, it's always a pleasure. Irving, we've been missing you since last year, and it's always so professional, and yeah, I'm so happy to see that. Also, the kids in our schools are in good hands. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thank
so happy
you.
to be
Have
part
a
of it.
great rest of the day, everyone. Bye. Thank you.